putting browser-based access just continues to expand that attack surface when it comes to these devices. And maybe what folks don't realize, especially kind of in a medical and healthcare setting, is that these are becoming just one more potential entry point to the healthcare network. And again, they just increase that risk that we just talked about around malware and ransomware. Even a lot of these smaller healthcare organizations are increasingly kind of becoming part of this interconnected web of infrastructure because we are doing so much consolidation when it comes to all these organizations at scale. I think of shadow IT is going to continue to just explode for most of our businesses. And so CISOs really need to be thinking about this now. How are they going to handle the explosion ultimately of business productivity and business doing things? And then how are they going to leverage AI, or how are they going to leverage other scaling kind of capabilities to support that and manage that risk? The role is not just challenging, but you spend very little time doing actual security work. The biggest impact you have to the team is working with the broader executive team, building support, doing budgeting, updating the board. You're not necessarily even making a lot of security decisions. So good CISOs really empower their team to be making most of the decisions day to day.
Hi, Ben. Welcome to Pay Fearless podcast. Such a pleasure to have you here with us.
Absolutely. Thank you. I've heard the podcast, so excited and humbled to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd love to share a little bit more about you to our audience. You've secured some of the most critical health data infrastructure in the industry, so I'm super excited about this conversation. You've had nearly 2 decades of security experience at companies like Redox, Twilio, and now you're BISO at Datavant, making the world's health data secure, accessible, and actionable. So I'm excited about everything we're going to talk. But maybe we can start off from the fact that you held security leadership roles at both healthcare organizations and tech giants. Is there something specific that pulled you into healthcare and InfoSec, or how did it happen?
Yeah, I think even for the same reason that I was drawn to security in the first place, healthcare technology really is a different world in many ways to a lot of these other tech companies and technology kind of fields you mentioned. On the technology side, we have all these bespoke technologies and protocols that folks have probably never heard of, like HL7 and FHIR and EHRs and EMR systems and whatnot. And on the business side, you have all of these relationships that are very different to your normal B2B or B2C relationship. And so that really results in a lot of technology and business dynamics that are interesting, quite frankly. So there's a lot of opportunity here to really broaden exposure to new technology and have an impact to the business. And that's really, I think, the thing that drew me to security and a career in security in the first place. When I first started my career, I didn't know that security wasn't a career path that one could have. I did an engineering degree, and so probably spent more time pulling things apart and understanding how they worked than actually building anything. And I think that's fundamentally what security is a practice in. We understand how things work and then use that to build things in a more secure way and then atop these technologies and systems we work with. So it's not just about kind of knowing that technology does a thing, but kind of how it works, why it works. And that makes it possible to break it and make it do things it wasn't intended to do. So I think the best security folks just have a passion for learning new things, learning how things work, and wanting to get exposure kind of in all these different areas, and healthcare tech is a great place for that, with so many of these new and interesting things to work with.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many different ways today to enter cybersecurity field. You started from engineering. Do you think today, if you go into engineering, is the path going to be similar to what you had, or would it be a lot different? Is the skill set a lot different that is required today to be where you are?
I think fortunately, yes. As I kind of mentioned, like security wasn't really a field that most folks got into. And if it was, It was really all about network security and that type of thing. It was firewalls and IPS systems and whatnot. And today, I think security is a career that is much more open and much more dynamic. And there's all these different types of roles in security that are just as impactful, if not more. We have folks on security teams that I've worked with who have come from all types of different backgrounds, and they bring that exposure and insight, I think, to a lot of these conversations that you don't get if you have a room full of engineers, from my humble personal experience, at least.
Yeah. Plus, the leadership security role or CISO role is very different in different organizations. I'm curious, how would you describe what you do on a daily basis to someone that doesn't quite know?
In a security role, in a CISO role, potentially, or?
Yeah, so your role is a BISO, so I'd love to understand a little more. What does it involve and how is it different?
Cool. Absolutely. So the risk of stating the obvious, being a CISO in a large and complex organization is a pretty tough job. And one of the reasons that we created the BISO role was that one of the things that makes it really hard is the diversity of the business. You have all these different types of customers, different strategies in different areas of the business, and very different products. And Datavant's very much one of these organizations. We serve a very large scale and diverse set of customers. We have all 20 of the top 20 life sciences organizations. We have 75 of the largest payer and insurance companies as customers. We work with 20,000 different hospitals and clinics across the country. And as you can imagine, each of these have kind of their different needs, requirements, priorities. They use different parts of the product. And I think to be a good CISO, you really have to have that attunement to all of the above, so you can provide contextual and aligned advice to the business or businesses. So you need to be on customer calls with a deep understanding of what is the problem that you're solving for that customer with the business. How do the products work that they're using? And I think it's impossible to do that as one person. It's not really something you can delegate to your kind of functional leads, like your director of AppSec or whatnot. So we designed the BISO team to essentially be a mini CISO, I should say, for each of our businesses. That way we have a senior leader who's responsible for security in each of our business lines, kind of sitting with that business, part of their senior leadership team, who's providing them with guidance on risks and security, not just in terms of this is what we're doing in security or this is what we should be thinking about, but this is what's happening and how it affects that particular business. And it's also a role that helps the wider security team understand how the things they're doing impact the business and how we should roll out new capabilities, so that they're not just done in a way that resolves security risks, but they're done in a way that prioritizes the security risks and impacts of that business. And so today we have a great team of BISOs who are doing just that, working with each of our business lines ultimately.
It really looks like BISO role is sort of a bridge between, the technology side and the business side that is able to translate things there and back, because I think so many times there are instances where, let's say, budgets is a big question and you always want to make sure you serve your customer, but at the same time do it in a safe manner. So was it something that is the complexity of the business that inspired that role, or what is the inspiration behind it?
Yes, to a degree. I think when it comes to budgets are really just a tool for prioritization. None of us have an unlimited budget. We have to choose what's most important based on the funding and money that's appropriate to invest in security. And so yes, like that role obviously plays a significant part in, as I kind of said, like how do we translate what are the risks that affect the business? What's most impactful to our business from a security perspective? back into our security priorities. So should we roll out capability A or B? Should we deploy tool A or B here based on what our customers need, based on the security risk of the business and whatnot? So yes, it absolutely plays a part doing that day to day. And also, as I kind of said as well, like how do we translate kind of what we do as a business and how do we make sure we've got enough focus and time understanding kind of how does our business work? Because that also really helps inform our security program ultimately, and having folks who are really in tune with like what is the business doing in a way that it's really tough to do as one person, looking at all the different bits and pieces going on in the business.
Yeah, makes sense. And I know healthcare is such a special industry. There is so much of the patient data being handled. I wonder what is sort of most sophisticated attack you've seen targeting healthcare industry that you thought, wow, that's a big one, and that's something that people should pay close attention to.
Yeah, it's interesting. Frankly, and I don't think this is at all specific to Datavant, I think the most impactful attacks are not all that sophisticated because they don't need to be. I see so many folks just spending all their time and energy focused on tooling and capabilities designed to mitigate these nation state attacks and tabletops, looking at these really sophisticated, in-depth, zero-day type attacks. But at the same time, they're not consistently patching their end user devices, or they don't have MFA rolled out consistently, or they don't have real backups and DR processes that have been really thoroughly tested. And I see so many of us just kind of checking the box and saying, oh yeah, we think we have all these basics in place, but are we really spending the time to validate is that in place everywhere consistently and doing that frequently? And I think healthcare can be very susceptible to this. And it's not necessarily easy. We have extremely high availability requirements in our industry that we need to be really mindful of when we're rolling out new security controls or creating friction in the business. So we need to be very careful with change management. We need to really consider a lot of these trade-offs, because if we have a practitioner who can't get into a system because their MFA is not working, is that going to cause harm to a patient, I should say? Yeah. But on the flip side, we've got this really pervasive lack of basic security hygiene that's causing a lot of these attacks you see day in, day out, and healthcare systems that have these ransomware attacks and downtimes and whatnot. So, as I said, it's a tough trade-off that we're making, and a tough kind of prioritization exercise we all need to go through.
Yeah, it's definitely very tough trade-off, because while you want to also take into consideration some of the emerging threats, you also have to make sure someone is there looking after all the basics. And finding the middle ground is, I can imagine, quite challenging. And that's probably where the BISO role enters, because you see all of these instances whenever something that on a lower level doesn't quite work out, you're all able to see. And today, as medical devices are increasingly browser managed, how does this expand the attack surface in the industry?
Yeah, I'm sure most folks who are listening to podcasts have probably seen kind of DEF CON presentation and other kind of demos over the years on poor device security in general. Seeing that these devices are never patched inherently. They're sent out usually with default easy admin credentials that are probably never changed, and other weak configurations. And I dare say, I think kind of on the whole, medical devices are really no different. And putting browser-based access just continues to expand that attack surface when it comes to these devices. And maybe what folks don't realize, especially kind of in a medical and healthcare setting, is that these are becoming just one more potential entry point to the healthcare network. And again, they just increase that risk that we just talked about around malware and ransomware. Even a lot of these smaller healthcare organizations are increasingly kind of becoming part of this interconnected web of infrastructure, because we are doing so much consolidation when it comes to all these organizations at scale. So, yeah, just also the what scripts and third parties are being used to build these front end and back ends that are being used to create ultimately these kind of browser managed devices. Yes, as I said, it's not going to be patched. So whatever you put on this device, whatever web front end it's serving is going to likely be there forever. So it's a really challenging problem that we need to really think through as we build these devices out.
Yeah. Do you think is it starting to being picked up more by healthcare companies, like as their attack surface? And what sort of attacks do you think people undervalue and should pay more attention to? I'm just being biased because I love extensions and I should be loving them less. But from your experience, what do you think something people are not paying close attention to?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the first part of your question, I do think that folks are becoming much more aware of the risk. Like we absolutely are having more conversations with senior leaders at our customers, with boards and whatnot around these security risks. So I think folks are becoming much more attuned to it, which is great. I think that the risk that probably goes underappreciated, especially today, is again coming back to these kind of browser-based attacks, is phishing. And I know that likely we all have monthly, quarterly, biannual phishing exercises we do of our user base, but I at least am observing in the industry that what were once considered very sophisticated attacks are becoming much more commonplace. So I think the historical guidance and even controls we've had around this threat probably need to be rethought and adjusted. I'm expecting we're going to see much more phishers with the old advice we've given around, hey, look for typos or other inconsistencies is likely going to go away. They're going to look highly legitimate in the coming months. And they're also going to leverage kind of proxy-based technology to bypass most non-phish resistant MFA technology. So SMS codes, app push codes, and push notifications, and kind of one-time passwords are all now relatively easily bypassed by these phishers. So I think to answer your question, like folks should be really thinking about using much more phish-resistant MFA technology, tools like FIDO 2.0, which is implemented through something like a YubiKey or Windows Hello for Business. If folks aren't thinking about this as a mitigation to that threat, they really should start, because I think the historical controls we've had aren't going to keep pace for much longer.
Yeah, I do really miss days when there were some spelling errors right now. Yeah. It just looks very, very nice and beautifully written. And it comes to everything. And I'm sure that AI is a big helper to all of these phishing emails. And on that topic, do you see AI as a net reducer or amplifier of risk in healthcare over the next few years?
I think it's going to be both. And I think which one impacts folks more is going to come down to how they think about it. I think that, yes, obviously, we're going to see many more of these attacks being driven by AI, which is going to fix all the spelling mistakes and all the other easy to catch issues. But I think the other kind of amplifier of risk here, as you kind of say, is like we're going to see businesses start to adopt this technology very rapidly. And that means a huge increase in their productivity. It means we're going to be dealing with 10 times as many new products and features being launched on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. It means we're going to have the business be building new things and introducing new services and capabilities to our customers. It means we're going to be using many more third parties and have many more suppliers in our supply chain. And so that obviously is going to create significant risk for security teams that aren't ready to scale. The concept, I think, of shadow IT is going to continue to just explode for most of our businesses. And so CISOs really need to be thinking about this now. How are they going to handle the explosion ultimately of business productivity and business doing things? And then how are they going to leverage AI, or how are they going to leverage other scaling kind of capabilities to support that and manage that risk?
Do you think within the healthcare industry, should employees be allowed to use AI tools like ChatGPT and stuff like that? Are you pro or against it?
I'm pro with good guardrails and controls. I think we're probably being pretty naive if we think that folks aren't using it. Whether they're using it to proofread emails, whether they're using it to automate some of their work on a day-to-day basis. And from a business perspective, they absolutely should be. If they're more productive, if they can get more done, if they can produce high quality of work for our customers, they should absolutely be leveraging these tools. But we as security, privacy, and compliance folks need to create the guardrails and the guidance for them to do it safely. We need to understand, is it, and give them proper guidance. Is it okay for them to go and upload 1,000 patient records to ChatGPT or whatnot? Is it okay for them to do X, Y, Z? Is it okay for them to go build a slide deck using those tools, using this type of data? It's really on us to give them that guidance, to understand the risks, and to also implement tooling that puts those guardrails in place. And so absolutely, I think that we should be supporting it. I think that we should be providing good guidance and good guardrails so that they can do it without exposing the business to unacceptable risk.
Yeah, I think fortunately or unfortunately, there are so many people today that want to be highly productive, and the ways how productivity is achieved can, in a way, come back to us and not the best, but not with the best results. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword in that sense. So
yeah,
obviously.
Obviously you need to give them guidance on hallucination risk and how should that be managed. It's just because I'm producing something that looks great doesn't mean it's technically accurate or correct. Even so, and again, that's on us as leaders in the business and as governance, risk, security, compliance folks to understand that risk, because we can't expect many of our average users to be as much an expert as we might be in these risks. So like any other security, privacy risk, it's on us to understand it, educate and inform our users so that they can make better decisions.
Yeah. And I know that you've had already recently long cybersecurity career. Is there any specific war story that comes to mind that you want to share with listeners and warn them what to do and what not to do?
I suspect, as most security leaders, I've had my fair share of really interesting, and it's tricky to share any specific event without giving away too much that I shouldn't obviously be talking about too publicly. But as I've kind of had a career in working in finance and banking, kind of when I started my career in security, so saw all the weird and interesting and ingenious, frankly, ways that folks manage to steal money from each other and from the bank. I think at Twilio, we saw all kinds of kind of weird and wonderful attacks on denial of service type attempts on communication infrastructure and Datavant. And in healthcare, I should say, we obviously constantly see attempts to access patient data due to its value and due to the impact potentially of impacting these systems. To answer your question without giving maybe too many specifics, I think the lessons I've learned kind of over the years, especially as a security leader, when it comes to these incidents and events, is that most of the job is communication. And it's something that you need to be doing constantly during these events, whether that's to the executive team, to your board, to your customers. You need to be thinking and consistently communicating so they know what's going on. That will give your team kind of the air cover they need to continue investigating, continue to mitigate and resolve the event or incident. And you actually probably end up spending much more time doing that than you do actually managing the incident itself and providing them with that direction. Usually they have that pretty well. They should have that pretty well under control. So make sure you have the relationships built up, make sure you kind of have the framework ready to go so that when these folks are hearing from you, this isn't the first time and they know what to expect. give them very clear guidance on what's happening next, and when they're going to hear from you again.
Yeah.
And maybe to that point as well, like the other thing is have those tabletops with the executive team ahead of potential incidents. And these aren't so much focused on the technical response. We're usually pretty good in security at doing tabletops that really focus on the technical response. If this system is breached, we're going to go in and do this, and we can investigate logs over here or whatever they are. But have the tabletop with the executive team that focuses on if this happens, what are we going to communicate to our customers? When would we communicate? What would we communicate? When would we shut a system down if it was breached and potentially cut off access to our products? Have those conversations ahead of time so you kind of know what to expect, because you don't want to be having these conversations the first time and be making those decisions during an incident because they'll slow you down, and naturally everyone is stressed. Everyone is going to have their own opinions in the room. And so it can take longer than it probably should to make it a simple decision like, okay, should we communicate this to a customer, and what should that communication look like? Get all of the templates done ahead of time, get legal approval ahead of time for what they're going to look like, and all that type of thing.
Yeah, I really think ahead, not just 1 or 2 steps, but like 10 steps ahead. And the attack that comes to mind, I think recently that happened with Coinbase, their remediation strategy. I don't know if you saw it, the way they responded. Basically, when they were put a ransom, they practically put a bounty. Like if someone will bring that hacker, they're gonna give the bounty for someone bringing that person up front, which I found to be a very creative response to cyber attack today, because you have to be creative. If attackers are creative, you also have to be in a way creative the way you respond to it.
An interesting response. And again, that's, you want to have that conversation with your legal team ahead of time and other executives and even the board ahead of time. Like, okay, these are the possible responses we could have. When would we follow each one, essentially? Because you don't want to be, again, in that situation where you're trying to figure this out on the fly.
Yeah. And earlier on, when you transited from Twilio to Redox, you also had to build security programs there. Was it challenging, and what was day one walking into that role?
At Twilio, potentially, or
to Redox, yeah,
in the healthcare tech industry. At the end of the day, building a security program isn't really that different, no matter where you are or what industry you're in. Like, most programs and capabilities tend to look similar at each stage. You have certain tools you want to build, certain processes you put in place. So I think it's not necessarily hard for that reason. I think what's hard is when you shift into a different industry, trying to figure out how you align with the wider business and your customers and partners, especially in healthcare, where the incentives and priorities are very different compared to a lot of other industries. So I think that's usually the tricky part when you make a big change in industry, like coming from kind of tech, communications and whatnot over to healthcare. But I dare say it would be the same going anywhere, is kind of getting that sense of, okay, how does this business work? What are their priorities, and how do I align the security program to that? I think the great thing about healthcare technology is that security, it really is important. It's something that every kind of customer, every provider, every payer we work with, and I've worked with in this industry, has demanded. And they make that very clear throughout the whole process to you as a business. So sometimes we necessarily don't always agree on how best to accomplish good security with everyone we work with in this industry. But I think nothing drives better business alignment, support from the business around when your customers kind of have that very high bar that you're expected to meet. As a security practitioner, it really does make your life much easier in some ways. As I said, it's not always easy figuring out how to meet the bar. You usually have a lot of internal conversations within the organization or with your customers about what is the best way, what are the best priorities. But at least kind of everyone's starting from that same point of, we want to be here from a security perspective. There's less debate about, is security the right thing to do? Should security be the priority? And there's more debate about, okay, how do we do that? What's the best way to implement kind of this expected outcome?
Yeah, this is an amazing place to be in because, there is still more traditional industries that are thinking, okay, how do we, when let's say we need to cut the budget, security is the one that's getting hit for some reason when it shouldn't. So definitely that's something that helps. And also, one more thing that I wanted to ask is, let's say someone comes to you and asks, hey, I want to transition from sort of more technical service to healthcare industry. What advice would you give them? Like 1-2 pieces of advice would you give to that person?
I wonder if this isn't even necessarily switching into healthcare tech, but just for security practitioners as a whole, it's like, get to know the business. I see so many security people complain that security is not being taken seriously by our businesses. And sometimes I wonder, like, are we really taking the business as seriously as we should be taking it? Like, are we looking into who are our top customers? What do they care about? Why are they paying us huge stacks of money to do a thing? And then aligning our security priorities and programs to that, really understanding what are the real risks to the business here, and how does security impact and influence those decisions and whatnot. And I think this ultimately, as a security practitioner, like, if we have a great understanding of the business, if we know what drives the business, it makes our life so much easier because we can then align to that. We can then frame our security priorities and the things we want to do to back to those objectives and ultimately get much more support from them than if we just come in and say, you should do this because security, because it reduces security risk, because it will eliminate the risk of a breach even. We can go in there and say, well, we have a business objective to win this customer, and this customer cares about these security requirements that we need to close the gap on. We want to get into this new market, and this market has regulatory and compliance requirements that we need to meet. Or where we're seeing kind of our other customers be affected by this issue, we could help solve that for them by implementing this particular security feature within our product. So again, frame things in a way that our business actually understands from a security perspective. And to do that, I think you need to understand and know the business, which I think is, again, my number one piece of advice for security folks out there.
It really makes you think that you need to be more empathetic to whatever other people are speaking to you, because whenever you always try to push your agenda, the question is, are you being receptive to whatever people are trying to communicate to you in the long run? Like, if you want the two things to be aligned, and luckily in healthcare, it is more aligned than other industries. That's something that should be consistent throughout all the business processes. And you've coached security practitioners through your career. What skills matter most when it comes to getting a role in like healthcare industry, like in terms of skills? I know that you mentioned you really have to learn the basics of business, but is there any particular skill that you think is more important?
That's a great question. And I actually don't necessarily think there is a single answer to it. As we were kind of talking about a little bit earlier, like, I see so many folks, part of the team I'm working with now, part of my previous kind of security teams I've been in, who come from such different backgrounds and have such different skill sets when it comes to security, when it comes to understanding risk, when it comes to technology. And I think the best security teams I've been on are the ones where we have like an incredibly diverse set of folks. We have some folks who have like a really strong understanding of cloud infrastructure and how that works and all the ins and outs. We have folks who understand stuff at the kind of the software layer and who know kind of inside out how these application programming languages that we build on have built. We have folks who have come from a risk background who have done a whole bunch of ITGC work in the past and worked with auditors on those. We have folks who come from backgrounds that have nothing to do with security at all. They were part of customer service teams in organizations and know all about the weird and wonderful questions that customers ask when they're trying to use certain products. So I don't know if I have a great answer to that question, unfortunately, apart from just figure out maybe what your knack is. What is the thing that interests you most? And spend a little bit of time going deep on that. Really understand how it works. And hopefully there's an overlap between that thing and something that we need to go secure and work on and really know how it works, as I said a few times, I think. Understand how to break it and how people implement it poorly, which results in security weaknesses. Because that's something that I value most in all the folks I work with. When I have a question that I have no idea about when it comes to a technology or a business process or whatever else it might be, and I come to them and they just can tell me exactly what's going on, what's broken here, and why things are the way they are. Those are the best folks that I love to work with.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people are taking note, like what kind of the right attitudes that are acceptable, whenever they come speak to you. Because at the end of the day, the culture is a big component.
And maybe it is like that's the skill set is really that, for lack of a better term, that bedside manner of security folks. You're going to have a lot of folks coming to you, be they in engineering teams or business teams or IT teams, that they're not going to know as much as you know about this thing. They may be working with it even day to day, and they don't quite understand how they should secure it. And it's your job to help them. It's not your job to do it for them, in my humble opinion, but you need to be able to kind of come to them and have that conversation and have them walk away wanting to implement something more securely and having a pathway to learn more about it, to understand it. You don't want them walking away thinking, this guy's a jerk, and I never want to come to him again because, guy or girl, I should say, because I feel like I've worked with a few of both, that, you walk away thinking like, I don't ever want to come back to this person because they really just made me feel bad about what I've done or what I've built or the thing that I'm responsible for. You want them to walk away thinking, I've got room to improve and I want to do better. And this person is helping me get there.
Yeah, you're right. And it's always about making other people feel more receptive. And another CISO mentioned the mark of a good leader is how many other leaders you're able to build throughout your career. And if you're not nice, Absolutely. It is very hard to accomplish.
Absolutely. It's very difficult. Absolutely.
Yeah. We have this tradition on our podcast, Ben, where typically our previous guest would ask questions to the next guest. So our previous guest asked, what advice would you give to yourself 20 years ago from where you are now?
It's probably a very long list of things. I think from a career perspective, when I ask many folks that I work with who are starting their careers or are midway through their careers and whatnot, like, what's your goal in security? Where do you want to go? What do you want to be working towards? I feel like 9 times out of 10, they say, I want to be a CISO. And I think I probably would have put myself on that list when I started my career. I would have responded the same. And I think most probably don't fully appreciate that obviously the role is not just challenging, but you spend very little time doing actual security work. The biggest impact you have to the team is working with the broader executive team, building support, doing budgeting, updating the board. It's very much a business role, not a security role in some ways. You're not necessarily even making a lot of security decisions. So good CISOs really empower their team to be making most of the decisions day to day. So very few decisions hopefully actually land on your desk. And I've absolutely loved my time as a CISO, and I'm loving my time as a CISO and a BISO, and have learned and grown so much from that. And continue to do so. But I think my advice is to, really enjoy and learn a lot along the way. and that it shouldn't necessarily, I should say, like kind of be the ultimate goal. Your goal is to be an awesome security practitioner, and the output and fruition kind of that process doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a CISO. There are lots of folks who have been doing this a long time, having incredible impact, who are not CISOs, and they are really enjoying and find a lot of reward in kind of doing what they do. So don't necessarily have those blinders on and say, I want to be a CISO. How do I get there as quickly as possible? And ignore other opportunities that come along that might be parallel to that. And it might be staying as an IC. It might be in a slightly different role in security or even in the business. So yeah, keep all that stuff in mind, ultimately.
Yeah, I really do think whenever you try to rush or skip a few steps, it sometimes can backfire, and really have to enjoy the process. So the person that actually asked this question, he also answered it himself. And what he said was, throughout his career, he doesn't remember as much the projects that he worked on as people that he worked with. So it's really about enjoying the process as you grow along your career. And each step has its advantages and disadvantages.
Yeah, that's a great call out. And I very much feel the same way. I remember very few of the projects or even the roles that I've had over the years. Like, I remember working with some phenomenal security folks, and whether they were CISOs, whether they were even graduates and interns I've worked with that have just been amazing, and kind of just seeing them do what they do, working with them, being part of. Yeah, that team has been an incredibly rewarding experience kind of throughout my career so far.
Yeah. And what question would you like to ask to our next person?
Absolutely. I think my question is kind of, I'm interested in their insight on effective strategies for helping to level up our non-technical or non-security, I should say, kind of colleagues, so that they can help us ultimately build better security. I believe that security is a team sport. So it's not just up to the security team to do good security and secure the business. It's our role to really level up the entire organization. So keen on hearing kind of what their insights, thoughts, tips, and tricks are in helping to build that out.
Okay, so to phrase that the way you just put it, how do you help your non-technical team level up their technical skill set to help do better security?
Yeah,
something
absolutely.
Like this?
Yeah, thank you. Much better phrase than I put it. Thank you.
No problem. Ben, it was such a great conversation. I really enjoyed getting to know your career and how you went along your way and ended up in healthcare industry. How, in a way, rewarding this space is, and how to say security open-minded it really is. Because today we are not in this perfect reality where everyone is acceptable and accepting the threats that exist. They're not the fairy tales, they're there. And it's great to learn how you tackle them and what kind of BISO role really involves, and how much you should be empathetic when you go about building relationships, whether it's your executive team or it's just everyone else in the company. And there are still a lot of challenges that have to be tackled, and sometimes it's really about the basics, not as much the nation state attacks, but still a lot of learnings along the way. And I'm sure whoever's going to listen to this conversation, they're going to hopefully take the notebook and make some notes from it.
Absolutely. It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.